Ah, man, I'm ready for a break.
Oh, I am too. I'm ready to shut it down. I'm
Yeah.
ready to just chill out. We've got some snow coming down today.
Hmm.
Um, so depending upon how much we get, like when we get the little guy home, maybe I'll cut out and then take him outside and play for a little bit in the snow.
Nice. Yeah, we have snow covering the grass. We were supposed to get a couple big snowstorms. At least in my area, it did not come through. So we had two snowstorms of maybe a half inch each. So, but enough that you have to go clear the walks. Otherwise, you get behind and they turn icy, and then it's
Mhm.
like an uphill battle. So,
Yeah, like right now, like we're kind of where this storm's coming through. We're kind of like right there on the one spot where it could go either way. We can get 6 inches or more, or we can get 3 inches, depending
yeah,
upon just literally the way the wind blows and how warm the air gets later on today.
yeah. Well, I could use a good snowstorm, a fire, a couch, a book, and chill. Hopefully, in a few days. It seems like this week, and we're recording prior to Christmas, right? This is going to be published in the new
Yeah, this
year.
will be published in January again. Yep.
So we're coming up to the Christmas break. We're going to shut down for a week or so at the end of the year. It feels like a lot of the companies this week are scrambling to get a ton of stuff done. And then while a lot of companies are open, I'm using air quotes here for those not on the YouTube simulcast, that they'll be around the office, but it seems like people are realistic that we're not going to get anything done. So
Yeah. I've even noticed like there's definitely been a drop off in chatter right now amongst clients, other vendors we deal with. Like I think a lot of people have just started to mentally check out.
it's
They're
been a rough
they're
year, man.
wrapping stuff up, like we've talked. Yeah, with like what we've talked about previous episodes. I'm starting to see a lot of people doing the same, where they're they're prepping notes, they're getting stuff lined up, they're getting meetings scheduled for the first couple weeks of January. But
Hmm.
like, yeah, most people are being realistic and like nothing's happening in the next week and a half.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
So,
nothing is going to happen in the week and a half following that.
yeah. We
But
talked
it's,
about that on a previous episode, right? That like
yeah,
I think the shutting down part, this is good. We should ramp down and take some time off. It's the we don't get back to doing anything for like 3 or 4 weeks in January, which is the worrisome part.
yeah. And that's what I think a lot of people are like. They're just like, instead of just going through the motions, it's like, let's not try to rush anything else out the door. Let's be realistic and let's plan for January.
Agreed. Agreed. Well, what else is going on?
So as far as the snow goes, it's actually kind of funny. Like most school districts out here are remote.
Yeah.
They've either have been hybrid and they're going remote for the last bit of December, or they're remote until sometime next year. With this being like the first major snowstorm to come through, the last couple of years have been mild. Like, with everybody being remote, you lose one of the rites of passage as a kid, and that's the snow day from school.
Yeah.
Um, so a lot of school districts have just I've been sending out notes yesterday and today saying we're going to either dismiss early or whatnot. If you're in hybrid, like we're going to dismiss early Wednesday. If it's remote, we're going to wrap up virtual learning on Wednesday, and we're having a snow day Thursday. We're not
Oh,
going
really?
to
Wow.
kill the snow day with virtual learning.
Hmm.
Now, my wife's school district hasn't announced that yet, but a lot of the suburban school districts have. Like, we're
Interesting.
not, we're going to let everybody have a snow day Thursday. Let's face it, the year's been rough enough as it is,
Yeah.
and we're a week away from Christmas. Let's just have a
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, that's interesting timing. I was reading this morning in our local paper that uh, some of the Salt Lake school districts will be doing away entirely with the snow day.
Mm-hmm.
In that snow days will now become remote learning days, so where
Mm-hmm.
those kids are going to lose that that fun. Although I don't know if it's fun when they have to make it up in like July when they're still in school, but at the time it's fun to like have
Yeah.
have a hidden like, we got out of school. It's like those days where you're just completely overwhelmed and you get a meeting cancellation. Sometimes that just feels amazing. That's what the school day is. Like, you know what?
Yeah.
We need that every once in a while.
Yeah, you need a snow day every once in a while. And that was my fear going into like the remote learning. Now, granted, we don't have a school age child yet, but losing that that thing that I know I enjoyed as a kid. Listening to the AM news radio station, waiting for your school code to be called, and there's no school, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
being able to just like sometimes the snow days happen like in the weeks following Christmas, so all the toys are still new and fresh. So being able to spend a day playing with all those new toys, and then a day outside sledding, and then when I got into high school, like those days were moneymakers for me. Me and a buddy of mine would grab
Mhm.
shovels and go around and shovel driveways for cash.
Oh, what a good idea. Well,
Yeah,
the times they change.
they have.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like I think it actually gives me a good segue into the topic I wanted to talk about today. So we're back to airing serious episodes after the holidays, and with the talk of some school districts saying, yeah, even with remote learning, we're still going to have that occasional snow day, or the school district saying, oh nope, we're not going to lose a day of school, we're just going to go to remote learning. I wanted to talk about something that you and I have mentioned in passing, and something we're seeing with a trend of everybody working remote for the last 9 months, and honestly going to be working remote for the foreseeable future, the next 6 to 9 months.
Yep.
Nobody is going back to the office en masse anytime soon.
Yeah.
Um, so I want to talk about how do we ensure that remote work does not become toxic. So, like, and to go back to my one point now, but like people not going back to the office anytime soon. Comcast has their major headquarters here in Philadelphia, and they announced 2 months ago that they are not bringing anybody into the office until June. One of the reasons is that they have so many employees coming from so many different, not just the city itself, but so many surrounding suburbs. All the different school districts are doing stuff differently. So one of the reasons is we know people are scrambling for childcare. Some people have their kids remote work. The school district has the kid 100% working remote. Others, it's something different. So we're just telling everybody June is the earliest you're coming back. Other
Mhm.
other businesses are jumping on that, saying we're not going to know what coming back to the office looks like until sometime next summer. But
Yeah.
one of the things you and I have been seeing is there's a disturbing trend with the work from home. Like I think was it Microsoft, they released some kind of remote work productivity kit that gamifies, and I'm doing the air quotes now,
Yeah.
gamifies your productivity. Which, I mean, we know what that means. It's just another way to make sure that you're tethered to your desk working. Um, Suzanne was saying that there was one teacher in the school district who, like, if they could, if the school district implemented remote work just slightly differently, what this teacher would have done is gone on a month-long road trip
Mm.
and integrated that into their teaching. But because they have to be tethered to a
Right.
computer every day, instead of like recording lessons and uploading them and doing it that way, they have to be tethered live to a computer. They couldn't get creative with it, and I know I'm kind of I'm butchering that story, but kind of a paraphrase there. So this is my long rambling introduction into how do we ensure that remote work doesn't become toxic. It doesn't become some kind of bastardized version of the office where there's now remote tools to make sure that there's butts and seats and heads staring at a monitor.
Yeah. I love the conversation, and we kind of started talking about this a little bit on Twitter a couple weeks ago. And because
Yeah.
of that, if you bear with me for about 60 seconds, I want to try something new with this recording. I want to throw it out on Twitter that we're recording this episode and see if we can get some interaction with people with some thoughts and
Yeah, do
ideas
it.
that we can incorporate into the show. So let me throw out a quick tweet here that we will be talking about this topic, and then let's see if we can get some interaction here. we are totally winging this.
It's the fun of it. It's the
Yeah,
fun of doing
it
it
is.
live-ish. I'm not cutting this out either.
No, keep it in. Okay, we will see if this works. If this works, this may be something cool. All right. So, yeah, so we I think started talking about this. Was it pre-pandemic? I can't remember. As I threw out on a tweet. Actually, let me double check my spelling here real quick. No, I'm gonna screw something up. It's okay. Okay, we will see if we get any interaction here. I'll throw that over here. So we started talking about this a while ago. In fact, we had a guest on the podcast, and initially, I think I had pushed back saying we didn't want to have this guest on because the software they were producing kind of goes against everything that we kind of hold near and dear to our corporate values. I can't remember what the conversation was internally, but we ended up chatting with them. I can't remember. Do you remember the name of the app or that episode? It was
Yeah, hold on. Let me pull it
Time
up. I'm
Tracker or
blanking on.
something. But that was the idea, right? Is that this
Mhm.
company is developing solutions for businesses to help keep tabs on their employees in a remote work environment. And I think we had a really good discussion around the balance of providing structure for management, but also not crossing over that line into a creepy factor, into a factor where we're micromanaging in a remote setting where literally we're watching your screen. And in fact, it's I didn't realize how common this is. My daughter works for a company, and her role is she does lead generation. So she does like initial calls and pre-qualifying leads and then passing them on. And their management team randomly just views their desktop and watches what they do without notice. It is so creepy,
Oh, that is awful.
but apparently that stuff happens all the time, and probably was happening before even this kind of remote work push. But I think we're seeing more of an emphasis on it now. And you kind of queued up the conversation talking about the Microsoft announcement. I want to say they ended up walking some of what they announced back a little bit.
Okay, I
If
missed
I'm
that
not
part.
wrong. We may want to follow up on it, but the initial release was pretty concerning. That such a big player. We're not, we're going from talking about some of these small startups saying, hey, there's an opportunity here for us to create solutions to help companies and managers keep tabs on their employees. That's one thing. But when we see like the giants of the game, like Microsoft, jump into that conversation and say, oh, by the way, we're already ubiquitous across your employees' computers. Just flip this switch and we'll help you keep an eye on everything they're doing. That's where it gets really, really concerning to me. And one of the hopes that I had as a good thing coming out of this work from home thing, because it hasn't been all good. It's been challenging. In fact, I think it's been challenging for us, and we've been doing this full time as a company since our inception, and many of us doing it a long time prior to that. This year's been different. It's been challenging and hard, and the remote aspect has been been really hard in general. And one of the positive outcomes that we were hoping that would come out of this is that more people would be able to experience the autonomy that a lot of us in the remote workforce get to experience. And I think they have to an extent. My concern is what's going to happen when we roll into next year when this becomes even more drawn out. Is that going to go away? In fact, let me see if I can pull up this post that I made on LinkedIn a couple weeks ago. Kind of
And while you're doing that, I want to jump in. So the episode you were referring to a minute or two ago, it was we had Liam Martin from Time Doctor
That's
on
right.
back in January 2020,
Yeah,
before the pandemic and like this level of working remote was on anybody's radar. And yeah, like we kind of came into that conversation expecting like a very spirited debate, and it turned out to be really, really good. Like, you know, they come at remote work from a different perspective.
yeah,
And I would suggest anybody go back and listen to that episode because, you know, they're offering a solution, you know, for those that have a large remote team, and it's very customizable to the, you know, to the level of degree that you want to measure, you know, remote productivity.
yeah. Yeah, it was a good episode, and again, that's we should cross reference this in our show notes so that if anyone's interested, do you have the episode number? If someone's on Apple or their favorite podcast app, they can pull that up.
Yeah, it was episode 89, and it came
Okay.
out on January 10th, 2020.
Yeah, so that would be a good episode to go listen to as a follow up to this. I think it was a very good and spirited conversation, even though we kind of went into it thinking we're coming from two completely different perspectives. So here was my post I made on LinkedIn 2 weeks ago. So I said the relatively positive vibe that remote work has right now will quickly erode next year as toxic work environments are recreated remotely, destroying the newfound autonomy many employees are enjoying today. I think that's really what it comes down to, and what my fear is that right now companies are struggling. Companies that have never had a remote work or distributed work program in place have quickly struggled just to spin something up. Just as other businesses have had to quickly adapt, right? There's not been a lot of thought into, oh, we need to knock a hole in the wall to put a drive-through in because we can't have customers coming into the restaurant, or oh, we need to spin up a curbside pickup program, or oh, we need to figure out how to have like thousands of employees work from home. We didn't have the luxury of being able to like really sit down and design and plan that out. Like things have just kind of been like, let's just go with it. Let's make something work and go with it.
Mhm.
As this has progressed for almost an entire year now, and we'll eclipse that year mark early next year, that isn't going to be the case anymore. Companies will have had time to strategize and think about, what's our long-term plan. And my biggest concern is that they're going to say, well, let's just replicate what we did in the office remotely. And to me, that's concerning, because I truly believe there's so many good things that are coming out of the work from home piece, specifically around autonomy and ability to control your schedule, that I would hate to see just wiped away because we want to go back to the let's try to somehow recreate this 9 to 5 butts in seat thing, but remotely.
Mhm. Oh yeah, totally. And I mean, we come back to the remote work topic every couple months because either something like this happens, there's some kind of announcement, or just we get more questions about, you know, how do you guys do it with such a small team, or, you know, what's some of your bits of advice for those that have been kind of thrust into it. So it's right now it's an ever evolving topic because you're right. Companies had to react really fast. Employees had to react very fast. And now, and a lot of them were sent home on a Friday saying you're going to be remote for the next 4 weeks. And now it's 9 months later,
Yeah,
and there's still no end in sight.
yeah. Yeah, I'm reminded of a client that we work with. I was talking with her a couple weeks ago about her experience, and she's like, I'm almost 9 months into this, and I'm finally taking a step back to design my home office to be comfortable because I was told this was going to be a couple weeks, and 9 months in, I was still telling myself it would be a couple weeks, and I finally had to admit it's not just going to be a couple weeks. So, yeah, for sure. I think that was definitely the case for a lot of employees.
Well, it's fun. It's interesting talking to some people um, that I don't think they foresee themselves ever going back to the office full time.
Yeah,
They'll I think a lot of them are now planning because they've seen the amount of time that they've saved commuting. They've seen how much more productive they can feel, that they feel like they're able to get more done at home. I see a lot of people that we work with directly going forward, maybe going into the office twice a week for specific things, maybe setting up meeting days for in-person sessions with people in the office, and then the other 3 days are their time at home.
yeah. It'll be really interesting to see how the design of the future office morphs and changes to potentially fit that model. I've talked about it in a couple previous podcasts. My first boss out of college, Paul Bartholomew, who had this idea back in 1999, where he wanted to transition our current office into more of a meetup hub. And
Mhm.
instead of having all these rows and rows of cubes and offices, to transform it into places where you could come collaborate, come meet, and not the cold, sterile meeting room with the long table, but really put thought into the design to transition it into a space that could really drive creativity and collaboration and really make better use of that space to do that rather than having these cubicle farms. It never came to fruition. He got unfortunately shot down to do that. I think the thinking was way ahead of his time, but I think we're here 20 years later. I think we're here, and it'll be interesting to see what happens
Mhm.
with all of this office space. Do we see these offices, downsize because there's not as much of a need to house everybody? Do we see them transition that space into more multi-use space and, put more thought into the design around how we use it rather than just being, I hate to kind of, I'm not even going to use it, instead of being like just cubes and cubes and cubes to house people in, to transition to more usable space to really do the things that I think the biggest thing we've heard about this work from home thing is we can't connect with people and we can't collaborate with people. Well, okay, if that's what we're saying the office is for, I don't know very many offices that are designed to do that, which is a bit humorous to me. That when we talk to people and we say, well, these are the two things we can't do in our remote. I'm like, you aren't doing that in the office because the offices you have aren't designed for that. So if
Mhm.
that truly is something that we need to do in an office, cool. We should like rethink the office design to make sure that we're creating environments that's truly supporting those things.
Mhm. No, I think companies that are forward thinking are going to go down that route. They're going to be able to reduce overhead because they're going to come to the realization that a lot of their employees are actually enjoying working from home. Um, but they're not going to eliminate the office completely. I think of like the company that has, say, 4 floors in an office complex in a Boston, in a Philadelphia, in a Chicago, like those kinds of cities. Say they've got 4 or 5 floors, they may downsize it to 2 floors. And then to your point, instead of it being a cube farm, it's it's working spaces,
Yeah.
um, where at that point, then people come into the office for a day, say like, let's plan an in person day. Let's reserve this space in the office for us to come in and work on these things.
I think that would be so amazing. It's the thing that has driven me to co-working locations in the past, and that it's not just a desk, it's not just a cube to sit in, but the best co-working locations I've found have put the thought into that to create the spaces, to curate conversation, to put certain people from different disciplines together, to just create like these maker spaces, creative
Mhm.
spaces. Um, Man, talk about a jump in innovation. If that's an outcome of this pandemic and work from home that we shift, I'm excited for the what can be created coming 2021 and beyond if this truly takes hold and companies really adopt the workspace as more of a maker creative space.
Yeah, I mean, think back to when you were at Adobe. I'm thinking back to the time when I was at GSI Commerce. I did have the ability to work remotely at times, and there were people that spent a good portion of their time working remotely, but
Yeah,
still there was, you had your cube at the office. There was an expectation you were coming into the office. Think back to that period, and if the company said, what we're going to do, we're getting rid of cubes. Everybody come in, clear out your desks. You're not going to have an assigned cube. You're not going to have an assigned workspace. You come in as necessary. You come in to work with your team or other members of your team as necessary. Um, Other than that, like, you're free to work from wherever.
yeah. I I think there's good evidence to say that that's where really valuable things get created. After I left Omniture, I went to Spark Networks. And while we didn't go to that extreme, I think if we had, it would have been even a completely different conversation. But one of the things that Spark Networks did is every Friday, around lunchtime, they basically said, and this was primarily for the engineering team, but others got in on it as well, said, this is your free open lab time. Like treat the office as your laboratory and do whatever you want. And there were really no constraints. The idea wasn't necessarily to do like force them to do whatever work stuff they wanted, but truly like have access to our computers or whatever and do what you want. And people did everything from prototyping with Arduinos and coming up with cool things. But one of the things that we found was there were several projects, and I can think of two specifically that came out of that lab time that got incorporated into our business that made the company millions of dollars. And looking back on it, I'm like, I don't think those things get created without that lab time. And to me, that was kind of a very telling story and kind of tying it back into how we kicked off the conversation around avoiding creating a toxic work environment. When you give people that autonomy to create, it's amazing what they can come up with. But all too often, um, all too often there's an issue where we don't trust people. We have to again monitor them and watch what their screen is doing and make sure they're sitting at their desk. That we kill that autonomy, and when we kill that autonomy, we kill their desire to be creative and create amazing things. And I just can't help think about all the lost opportunities that companies have had where you have really really smart employees, you've treated them like they can't be trusted, and so they just don't create for you. What have we missed?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's where I was thinking about, like, where do we pivot the conversation? We've been talking about, like, our hopes of where companies are going to be able to take this. Those that have the forethought to do that. Um, because then there's going to be those that are going to go the complete opposite direction. They're going to see getting rid of office space as a way to kill overhead, put the burden on employees to come up with their own office space, and then bring in those draconian methods to make sure that people aren't doing the laundry. They're not cutting out for a couple of hours to go play with their kids in the snow. With during the winter time, that they're not, say, hey, jumping in the car and going to drive an hour and a half and work from the beach. Like work, set up shop on like one of the little coffee shops up on the boardwalk for a couple of hours. You know, like, you're going to have those companies that do that, and that's what I'm trying to think about. Like, what kind of message can employees send to a business that starts to go in that direction? Are you getting any feedback on Twitter? You're on mute.
I'm on mute. Yeah, I got a question from Ryan. He's going out on a run with his dog. He said, "I'd love to hear you and Jim talk about getting out of funks." I threw this out on Twitter yesterday, talking about kind of some of the challenges with remote work, and again, we've been doing this forever, but this year has been a new challenge. He's saying, I'd love to hear what your guys' thoughts are on exercise, other strategies, based on tweets yesterday. Especially interested in how Jim is balancing remote work with a young child at home.
That's a good one. So the previous 2 weeks leading up to this week, we kept JP home from the babysitter. We had my wife and I had a funeral to go to, and just to take all the possible precautions following that, we hunkered down at home. We kept him home, and it was hard those days. Like, I came in with the plan of, I'll spend all day with him, and then when my wife gets done teaching, it's kind of like a tag team. Like, okay, you're in, and then I would go to work. But then, dinner quickly approaches, and then bedtime, and the next thing I know, I'm fading at 8:30, trying to put my thoughts together into some kind of coherent, sentences in an email, and it turned out to be very, very hard. But one of the things I'm doing, and to flash back to a previous episode, this isn't in the context or thought process of the new year, new me bullshit, New Year's resolutions, but like trying to set myself up with some good habits for next year. And one of the things, I'm going to take the advice that you and Evan have given me and make it a point to go for a walk midday to clear my head. Like, I've actually put it on my calendar that it can't be booked, that I'm going to have an hour booked just to go outside if it's not happy weather, and just go for a walk around the neighborhood for 45 minutes or so, put on some music, and just clear my head. Because I think, to Ryan's point, I've definitely gotten into funks this year. You start the day off with a crappy email, and then you're tied to your desk. And I was even saying, I think, like, in the beginning of this, a lot of the things I had in place prior, there was like a local convenience store chain in this area called Wawa. My wife actually picked me up a small hot chocolate, when she quick ran out for stamps. Like, when I would have like a rough day, like around lunchtime, I'd just jump in the car and go get a coffee, come back, and like just the 30 minutes of driving over, coming back, sipping on the coffee, like it would do wonders to clear my head. But when the pandemic hit, like, doing that became much, much harder. So again, like, going back to like the thing I'm starting to incorporate now, I'm trying to get into that habit this week, is blocking out time every day just to go out of the house and just take a stroll around the neighborhood, get some fresh air, and just clear my mind.
Yeah. I love the question as well. And apologies to those watching on YouTube. You have to watch me eat pasta, but I'm hungry. So, it's a great question, because, we kind of queued up the conversation with some of these draconian measures that management and the company is putting on employees. But we also have to remember that there's a lot that we do have control over. Now, if we're going to be busted because we're not sitting at our desk between 8 and 5, 9 and 5, that may be a different conversation. But taking that time is so critical. And this is from a conversation that I had thrown out on Twitter. I'm like, man, I'm just like in a funk. I'm like, I'm not doing the things that I know makes me energetic and my brain work well. I need some advice on how to get out of it. And a lot of the overwhelming response was, we need fresh air, we need exercise, we need to get up and get moving. And I think that that's been the biggest challenge for me in the pandemic, is that in addition to working from home and kind of having the proximity of home and work right on top of each other, we've limited just our movement overall. And so we've become very kind of static. And I think that has played out in really depressing a lot of moods and putting people in these funks. And again, everyone's saying, like, man, it's okay to admit this year has been incredibly hard. I want to talk about your idea of scheduling it because it came up a lot in our Twitter conversation yesterday about this topic. In that it's not enough to just say I know that this time's important. You have to prioritize it by putting it on a schedule. So it sounds like that's something that you've prioritized as far as like between certain times or like putting time on your calendar. Is that the depth you're going, or and have you found that that's critical for you to be able to stick to that routine by actually scheduling that time for yourself?
Yes. If I don't schedule the time, I will get lost in the day. It's if I don't like either time will get booked, and that's the other thing coming into to next year. I want to get strict around my calendar again. Over the last 6 months or so, I've become very lax. Like I think I made jokes about it before here. It's actually on my calendar Thursday afternoons and Fridays. I book no meetings. It is supposed to be my time for like thinking for planning and whatnot, and I've allowed people to kind of eat into that time. And I definitely, as part of my planning for 2021, is to become stricter about that. But to your question, yes, if I don't have that scheduled, it's either going to get overrun, people are going to book it, um, or I'm just going to get lost, and what would have been that time to go do something to just walk away from the computer, it's going to
Yeah.
get lost and it's going to get eaten up by something else.
Yeah, I need to try that because I agree with it. I have not been very good at holding myself to a schedule. But unfortunately, to your point, when we don't do that, it becomes an afterthought. And you said it like by the end of the day, and now it's like dark so soon. It's like 7 o'clock. I'm like, I'm done, man. Like I just don't want to do anything. And if we haven't kind of prioritized that time for ourselves, it very easily gets away from us. It gets dark out, it gets later in the evening, or like, yeah, do it tomorrow. And there's always like pushing it out. So I really like that concept. And again, there was a lot of people that provided that feedback that we really need to prioritize prioritize and schedule that time for ourselves, and I think that will go a long way regardless of the things that management may push down and create toxic environments. We still do, as long as we're at home. I think we have a lot of autonomy and control that we need to make sure we're taking advantage of. And that's a key point. We've talked about it a lot internally, where we've had to call ourselves on and say, man, we have all of this opportunity and we're not taking advantage of it. This is frustrating, right? You and I have had those conversations. It's like, why are we not taking advantage of this freedom and flexibility we have in our schedules? We need to force ourselves to take advantage of this time. So I think that's a really strong takeaway, and I'm really glad Ryan asked the question. Because it is something that we should feel like we have control over. Even as changes come down in how companies manage remote work, we still have some control over how we design our day, and we should take advantage of that.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. And just so you know, like this time of year, it gets dark by 4:45.
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Seriously, around 5:36, I'm like, it's bedtime. I don't even
Oh,
know.
hey, I'm done for the day. Like my brain is shot. I just want, like we by 6:30 we've wrapped up dinner, and I'm like, okay, let's just kind of start to mellow out. Let's get the little guy ready for bed, and then give us just a couple of hours just to chill.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, good question. I wish there were more questions coming in. Apparently, my social reach is not very impressive. Or maybe I need to put it out before we start recording.
Those
But this
all
would be
come in
cool.
when we wrap up.
Right, like I'll get a bunch of questions right after we
Hmm.
stop recording. Wondering if we should do a test run next year of doing like a live stream on Twitch or something. Seeing if we can get like do like an actual. I mean, we can record and still do like the push out to our podcast networks, but it would be cool if we kind of said, hey, if anyone wants to watch us record in real time, no editing, it is what it is. Come participate, be on Twitch, ask questions. I think that might be pretty cool.
That's one of my 3 objectives for next year. I've already written down. I
Awesome.
want us to do a bit more live streaming.
Yeah, it'd be super cool.
Like I want to put together, like we still have our hour for our tradition, what has become our traditional podcast, and
Hmm.
that recording session, but then try to find either like 2 hours every other week or something like that, where we just have a live stream. We let everybody know we're going live, and then just jump on and see who wants to join us for
Riff,
a chat.
just riff. Yeah, man.
Yeah,
I think
just
it'd be
talk about it,
super
see what's
cool.
going on.
Yeah, I think it'd be super fun. I don't know if we can get a mass of people, but I think if we make it easy for people to join and interact, it could be a cool little thing and a nice little break in the day. You know, we miss it. We have Twitter, we have social, but we miss these kind of smaller group gatherings, and maybe we can fill a little bit of a gap there. So,
Hmm.
all right, I look forward to trying that out.
Yep.
Look forward to trying that out. So we talked about kind of management taking a more office first approach um, to remote work. Ryan's question was great around how we break up the day and how we maintain mental clarity. What other concerns do you have? What other concerns have you heard from others that may be in a remote work for the first time scenario that they have going into next year about it taking maybe a negative turn?
I mean, I haven't heard it from anybody individually yet. It's been more along the lines of hearing what companies are going to do. So if anything, it's us hearing what companies are going to 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 bring to their employees. Um, yeah, we just keep going back to the Microsoft example, because I mean that is the easiest one, I think, for us to pick apart. But I think, like, if anything, it's companies like, I'm trying to think of a couple examples. Like, I mean, like, I've heard like a few around, like, there's going to be some level of like time tracking coming in. Um, some, I think some companies want to make sure that you're not doing like the stereotypical work from home things, like going and doing the laundry or something like that. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Don't eat while you try to record a podcast here. Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day. Slightly different thought in my head, but I can see a very toxic outcome of this being that, well, if you're at home working, we need to make sure you're working 8 hours a day. I was thinking about this more in the relationship between a full time employee and a consultant working on an account. That oftentimes the pushback we hear from companies is, well, you cost more than it would be for us to hire a full time employee, and we can go down that path of like, well, if you can hire a full time employee that brings the expertise and knowledge we have, you should do that. But more so, I thought, we often get way more done than full time employees because when we're on the clock, when we're working for a client, we are fully immersed working for a client. There's this there's this lie that we've told ourselves that if we're in the office, we're working. But let's be honest with ourselves. And we've all been in the office at some point in our career. Were we coming close to putting in 7 hours a day of work? Because I
no.
know I haven't. Maybe a day or two here and there out of an entire year, but there was no way that I was putting anywhere near 7 hours of work in a day. Maybe three or four, maybe. The
Mhm.
rest of the day was filler.
Yeah, you get together, you go out to lunch, and like the one office I worked at 7, 8 years ago was near a major shopping center. So we go over and get some lunch, and then we take a walk around. And next thing you know, you've been gone for an hour and 15 minutes. You get up and go to go get some coffee, and then you run into somebody else. And yeah, like a lot of times, like just the regular banter around the
And
office.
that's not people just like, I'm gonna use the UK term here. That's not just people bunking off at work, like taking it easy. Like, it's just part of, we just aren't built to be on that much time that straight sitting in a desk.
Mhm.
And that to me, speaking about remote work turning toxic, That's a real possibility. That this lie we've told ourselves that if you're in the office, you're working, you're doing a solid 7, 8 hours a day of work. If we've believed that lie and now we're going to push that onto remote, and we're going to be even more heavy handed about it because, well, if we can't see them, we can't trust them, they're not working. So we now have to put all these safety measures in place to ensure they actually are working 7 hours a week. Companies are going to be massively disappointed because they're going to uncover that people aren't doing 7 hours of work a day. And you know what they're going to blame? They're going to blame remote work. They're going to like, told you,
Mhm.
well, we let them work from home and they're not working. I'm like, guys, they weren't doing it anyway. I guarantee you they weren't doing it anyway. So that's a huge concern to me, is that they're going to take this lie that the office work was 7 hours a day. They're going to try to enforce it onto remote work. They're going to be dissatisfied. And because of that, they're going to be even more heavy handed from a micromanagement standpoint. Um, and that's just going to create a toxic remote work environment.
You're going to burn people out doing that.
For sure.
You
It's
know,
just not sustainable.
yeah, it's going to fuel like bad habits, like being a workaholic. It's going to fuel bad habits of checking your email right before you go to bed and right as you wake up. Because I mean, we already know those people that somewhat did it before are now in a state where they wake up, they roll over, they grab the phone off their nightstand, and the first thing they look at is what emails have come in since for overnight, or if you have people that are working across multiple time zones, what emails do people already start sending today?
Mm-hmm. It's true. And I wish I would have saved this tweet. I saved it, but it's too far buried for me to find it. But it's interesting in this context. I saw a tweet come through that had a link to an article or research that was taking the premise that most employees only can be in creative flow like 3 or 4 hours a day at a
Mm-hmm.
maximum. Like there's a set number of hours where you really can be producing work. And this whole like I don't even know. Maybe we should do some research. I'm sure it's manufacturing based or something. This whole concept of 9 to 5, and that humans are going to fill this time. We need to kind of tear that down, especially if remote and distributed is going to continue to grow, become more ubiquitous, which I absolutely believe it will. We can't, and I've talked about this on LinkedIn quite a bit. We can't simply take what we did in the office and translate it to remote. It's not going to work. So if next year our desire is to say, well, how do we create a 9 to 5 butts in seat environment but remotely? It's going to be toxic as toxic can be. We're going to burn people out. And if we thought the end of 2020 was bad, the end of 2021 is going to be even worse. So, that's my warning to businesses and managers and people in positions to help design what these new programs and policies look like for companies. Number one, don't just try to replicate what you have in office. It's not going to work. And number two, let's start to question some of these notions that we had of this is how work happens, that we go in at 9, we do all this work, and then we go home at 5. That never was working that way. And let's start challenging ourselves on that lie that we told ourselves, that we were absolutely being 100% productive from 9 to 5. Because if we can't challenge that lie, that's going to be a real problem for how we design our remote work programs going into 2021.
And I want to add something that you were just talking about, like, employees only being able to be in like that creative flow 2 to 3 hours a day. You reminded me of like this, I think it was in Forbes 3 years or so ago. And I was telling my buddy Quentin about it a couple weeks ago, is that the article was around like, why do certain executives pretty much wear the same clothes day in and day out? Steve Jobs, he had his dress code of, his uniform of jeans, black turtleneck. I think they were saying Barack Obama only wears blue or black suits, and that's it. Like they narrow that choice, and they gave several other examples as well. And they were saying that, like the human brain can only make so many decisions in a day. Like you reach a point of decision fatigue as well. So to your point of being creative for only so many hours a day, you can only make so many decisions in the day too. So people who want to be able to optimize their capacity to make decisions and thoughtful decisions, they find ways to eliminate other decisions that they have to make. They remove the decision of what clothes am I wearing today? What did I wear yesterday? Well, I'm just going to wear the same thing or the same type of thing day in and day out, because then that's one less decision I have
Mm.
to I have to make.
No, that's an interesting point. I hadn't read about that or heard about that, but it makes sense.
Yeah. So
That
if you're
makes sense.
right, like we're not creative, we're not working, like we're there, but we're not like full on working for 8 hours a day. There's only so many decisions we can make. If we try to make it so that people are expected to be churning out work and making decisions for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and there's no break, because while yes, there's a lot of crap that comes with having to commute, it
Hmm.
also serves as a break
Yeah.
between work and being at home. You're going to burn people out. You're going to turn a company into a meat grinder.
Yeah. I would love to have a follow up discussion on this. I actually got into a brief conversation last night on Twitter. Not exactly this topic, but similar topic. Um, it was from an entrepreneur that's building a new company, and he said, one of the things he struggles with is this feeling of guilt of doing anything that isn't directly building his company, from like doing the dishes to going grocery shopping. He feels like that's taking away from building his company, and I understand that from one perspective. And I respect that people get to that depth of just singular focus, and maybe that's what it takes to create amazing things. I don't know that I would ever be able to get there. That seems way more than I can focus on. But on the other hand, that falls really nicely into this conversation of, even if that is your singular focus, can you really have the brain power unless you're some, elite gifted person to focus all your waking energy on building one thing? I, I don't know that you could. We need these
I don't think
we
you
need
can.
these breaks. And to your point, maybe it isn't even about taking breaks. It's that our brains are just limited in the capacity of the number of calculations and things that we can do in any given period of time.
Mhm. No, like I mean, you need some kind of break. You need some kind of hobby, and like that's something I came to a realization a couple months ago. In that, like I got myself like really, really into a rut where back in like May and June, where I was working all day. We'd put the kiddo to bed. My wife would go off to bed, and then I'd work for another 3-4 hours into the night. And I'd be going to bed at 11:30 or so, and then waking up a zombie the next day at 6:30. Um, I wasn't getting any kind of workout in, and I was starting to realize like I had no hobby, right? Like anytime that would be taken up with some kind of hobby, and this is also another thing is I've noticed a lot of the people we work with who work in some form of software, some kind of digital product. Like I've seen it with Randy building his guitars. I'm seeing a lot of people gravitate to some kind of hobby where there's something tangible at the end. And I guess it's because like our work, it doesn't result in anything tangible. And that's what also started making me think like I've got no hobby. My physical fitness was going away. Like you need to take a break. You need to walk away from it for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. Nah, we should do that as a follow up. I think that would be a really interesting discussion to have.
Yeah. No, I think there's some good follow ups out of this to really get the year going right.
Yeah, and this has been a good conversation. Unfortunately, we only had one taker on my. I'll incorporate you live into our recording, but it was a great question, and
Mhm.
maybe we should try this some more. And I think the live stream will be fun. I'm looking forward to trying that out here in the near future.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's put it out there like an hour or two before we sit down to chat, and
Yeah,
let's see what we get back.
yeah, yeah. It'd be cool. Good stuff.
Cool. Yeah, really good stuff. Lots of fun.
Yeah.
Cool. So we'll go ahead and wrap up for there and wrap up at that point, and we'll chat with everybody later.
See you guys.